I want to just share briefly the two main use cases for the product. So on a critical infrastructure side, you have this secure gateway edge, right? How the secure gateway edge gets deployed in the network is it is physically connected to, let's say, an industrial controller, a server, a camera, a switch, and then on the LAN side, the microsegment side, all of the assets connected to the secure edge become protected inside of the microsegment. On the outer side of the Byos Secure Edge, it can connect to the network through a wire on an Ethernet basis, or it can connect as a client on that Wi-Fi, okay? So in this specific use case, you can see that in the diagram on the right, we have a bunch of, legacy controllers that have typically either been air-gapped because the owner of the network doesn't want those devices connected because they have baked-in vulnerabilities, or they have no good way to protect them, or they want to connect them, but they don't want to spend all the money required to actually run cabling to them because they want to maintain a flexible manufacturing or production shop floor type of arrangement. And then on the networking side, they don't want to have to implement some sort of packet inspection or networking protection technology to actually say, okay, what traffic is originating from these devices? What devices do I have on my network, et cetera, et cetera. And so Byos can connect those controllers wirelessly to isolate them from the network while still providing access to them through the overlay. And so you can imagine, before, telemetry collection was a manual process where you'd walk up to the controller, it was offline, you'd plug in a USB stick, grab the data, walk it over to an engineering workstation, rinse and repeat, tens, 20s, hundreds of times. And now you can actually have all of your production assets connected to Byos and thus connected to the broader network, eliminate the internet exposure of those assets, and still maintain granular remote access and control and traffic to those assets without all of that exposure. So it's quite a powerful use case for Secure Gateway Edge. On the Secure Endpoint Edge, this is a use case for protecting critical high-level executives, remote employees, developers, third-party contractors working from home, where you might not own their laptop, but you want to own the communications of their devices when they are working. So have them plug in the Byos device, put resources behind the Byos secure overlay, and only allow access to those resources when the Byos Endpoint Edge is connected to the laptop. I think what's important on this case for sort of more defense-oriented customers and applications is that Byos meets sort of two main requirements driven through the NSA. You have the CSFC, Commercial Solutions for Classified, where Byos actually is a retransmission device on behalf of the asset that is providing hardware-based isolation. And on the second requirement here is Byos is an advanced maturity microsegmentation provider through the Zero Trust network and environment pillar, which is one of the 6 pillars of Zero Trust. And so it's a good product for a lot of those higher criticality and sensitivity type customers that you might find in governments, across the world. There's a number of other use cases that Byos works within. We have, securing telco networks when you have remote equipment across across different sites. Our upcoming product will have an LTE capability so that a GSM module can be attached to it. And in addition to, both Ethernet and Wi-Fi, Byos will be compatible with cellular connections. Again, that's coming soon. And on a use case where you have, where you are an OEM and you're deploying your machines inside of other networks that you don't control, how do you have a way to isolate your own assets that you're protecting and managing inside of a network you don't own? Byos can be that sort of control point that says, okay, instead of me now having all of my own equipment attached to the network directly, and depending on that network owner to provide the protection, I can add Byos as an isolated layer of unified protection and control in front of my assets in that other network. So now that, the network, they'll do their thing, but I, as the OEM, can do my own protections when I get deployed in any other network that I shouldn't trust.